Hi folks, this is my second of 4 videos on Virgil's Aeneid for the set text prescription 2023 to 2024. I'm going to go through the Latin, the English and the effects you need for the paper. And so they carried on to the end of the road on which they had started, and at last came near to the river, when the boatman, now in midstream, looked ashore from the waves of the Styx and saw them coming through the silent wood towards the bank. He called out and challenged them. You there, whoever you are, making for our river with a sword by your side. Come, tell us why you are here. Speak to us from where you stand. Take not another step. This place belongs to the shades, to sleep and to night, the bringer of sleep. Living bodies may not be carried on the boat that plies the Styx. So this is Charon speaking to Aeneas and the Sibyl. And you can see Nawita is the boatman, Stygiae, the river Styx, prospexit, looking out, ab unda, from the waves. Per tacitum, so quietly, and then we have ire, to go, peremque, on foot, advertere, to advert, to turn, ripai, to the riverbank. So lots of vocab from the language paper. We have ad greditor, like to set out towards, like the deponent that you learnt for the language paper. Armatus, literally having been armed. Quid venias, why have you come? Umbrarum, of the shades, hic locus est. This is the place. Somni noctisque, so we've got sleep and night. Corpora viva, living body. So lots of vocabulary you know for a 5 marker. If we look at the effects in this passage, if we start to break it down, we can see that the word choice Virgil uses makes clear that Aeneas and the Sibyl are quite tentative, in inceptum, having set out, having begun, per tacitum, quietly. And here all of a sudden, sic priora greditor dictis, we have a caesura, and that breaks up their creeping to the riverbank with Charon's response. So the dialogue in itself, you could class that as an effect, the fact that we have different characters ventriloquise, different characters speaking. Quis est, whoever you are, armed, coming to my riverbank. Quis and quid as well. The way that Charon's dialogue is really fractured and asks a lot of questions, suggests a tone of panic in his voice, despite the fact that he's quite an imposing figure. He asserts umbrarum hic locus est, so we've got this balance of night and shades. And in the very end, we have a little bit of homoteleuton as well. On corpora viva carina stygia. So that adds a rhythm to it as he's asserting that living bodies cannot cross the Styx. Nefas is also a really interesting word choice. We can't translate it very exactly in English. It's the idea of a moral crime. So quite often this used to be translated as a sin, but that's a really Christian or Catholic word. So it would be wicked, it would be wrong to allow a living body to cross the Styx. And this is a word that reflects Roman religion in a way that English words can't. So you can talk about the word choice of things like nefas, and as we're going to see coming up, pietas, this contrast of piety and impiety, as we progress through the underworld with Charon and Aeneas. Okay. It gave me little enough pleasure to take even Hercules aboard when he came, or Theseus, or Pirithous, although they said they were born of gods and their strength was irresistible. It was Hercules whose hands put chains on the watchdog of Tartarus and dragged him shivering from the very throne of our king. The others had taken it upon themselves to steal the queen, my mistress, from the chamber of Dis. The answer of the Amphrysian Sibyl was brief. So nec viro, no indeed, as he's talking about the crimes of previous people who've travelled down. Quamquam, although, dis geniti, born of gods. Manu custorem, so like the guard. Manu is by hand, so this describes how he's captured. Vincla petivi is seized in vincla, in chains. Traxi, dragged. Trementem, trembling. Dominam, mistress, so this is talking about Persephone or Proserpina in Latin. Breviter, briefly, and then vates is prophetess. So there's plenty of vocabulary you already know to help orientate you if you were doing your 5-mark translation. Okay, let's have a little read ahead. You have no need for alarm. These weapons of his bring no violence. The monstrous keeper of the gate can bark in his cave and frighten the bloodless shades till the end of time. And Proserpina can stay chaste behind her uncle stores, Trojan Aeneas, famous for his devotion and his feats of arms, is going down to his father in the darkest depths of Erebus. Insidiae is like insidious, so no such wicked things. Insidiae tales is such. Absiste movere, like don't be moved, you have no need for alarm. That is the imperative with a passive infinitive. Okay. Ingens janitor, the huge gatekeeper, so that is Cerberus. Aeternum for eternity. Latrans is barking. Umbras is our ghosts again. Limen is the threshold next to Proserpina. Pietate insignis et armis, so outstanding in piety, and arms, insignis is outstanding. Genitorem is the very formal word for father that Virgil usually uses instead of pater to give this idea of lineage. Descendi ad umbras, descends to the shades. Plenty of vocab you know for a 5 marker. Let's have a look at the effects that you would need for an 8 marker or a 10 marker. Okay, so Alcidem is the patronymic for Hercules, and this is a heroic thing to do, to mention somebody by their father's name and not necessarily by their own name. There's a bit of balance in nec vero nec thesia, so comparing Heracles to Theseus. And if you look ahead, we've got alliteration in Traxitque trementan and dragged him, Cerberus trembling, okay, to build the pace at that part of the story. We also have, when we go to the Sibyl's speech, an imperative, so she's quite direct with Chiron, which reflects her power, even though he is a very imposing figure. She uses yussive subjunctive as well, like let the huge gatekeeper remain, which is talking about Cerberus. She's answering directly Chiron's concerns. We have a little bit of hendiadys. So hendiadys is when 2 words are coupled together, like safe and sound, land and sea. And we see this outstanding in piety and arms, because this is connecting 2 ideas that are the cornerstone of Aeneas' heroism. And remember that pietas is a key Augustan value, so although he's described as Troilus Aeneas with a big caesura, pietate is an Augustan value, so it's woven in with the idea of Aeneas being what we'd call a proto-Roman hero, somebody who's not Roman yet, but he's really making the mould of what a Roman ruler should be like. We have balance at the bottom with ad genitorem, to his father, ad umbras, to the shades. Genitorem, as I mentioned earlier, is a really kind of formal word for father, and it's the idea of his like ancestor or his, what's the word? Like founding father almost. So it's much more formal than just saying pater, okay? And it's giving this sense of lineage that's going to become really important when we meet Anchises in the underworld, and he starts to take us through the whole line of the Roman race that comes down from Aeneas. So even just very subtle things like the word choice for father and son. Son usually is natus, genitorem is often father, creates this idea of a bigger picture of ancestry and not just a very narrow view of the family on personal terms. If the sight of such devotion does not move you, then look at this branch that had been hidden in her robes and realise what it is. At this, the swelling anger subsided in his heart. No more words were needed. Seeing it again after a long time and marvelling at the fateful branch, the holy offering, he turned his dark boat and steered towards the bank. So this is quite an unusual translation in some ways. If we just pause, it's because of the brackets that you see in the Latin. Aperit ramum, qui veste latera. She retrieved the bough that she'd been hiding in her clothing. And we need the brackets in the English at the bottom, so apologies for that. But there's plenty of vocab, you know. Ramum and ramum aureum are really good words to remember. If you wanted to go beyond what's printed on the paper in a 10-mark essay, you could talk about the ramum aureum as like a proof that the Sibyl uses, and that would be really good value for memory if you're revising quotes. Si te nulla move, if nothing moves you, of such a pious image, pietatis imago, so lots of root words in English are helping us out here. Agnoskas is like recognise, okay? Corda is heart, admirans, admiring, venerabile donum, the fateful gift, the venerable gift. Longo tempore, after a long time, visum, having seen it, advertit pupim, he turns the front of his ship, the steer of his ship, gripai, to the riverbank. Lots of vocab you know here, so happy with a 5 marker. He then drove off the souls who were on board with him, sitting all along the crossbenches, and cleared the gangways. In the same moment he took only the huge Aeneas into the hull of his little boat. Being only sewn together, it groaned under his weight, shipping great volumes of stagnant water through the seams. But in the end it carried priestess and heroes safely over, and landed them on the foul slime among the grey-green reeds. So if you look, you can see there's lots of vocab, Again, simul at once accipi, he accepted. Ingentem Aenean, huge Aeneas. Sub pondere, under the weight, which you've probably seen for the language paper. Transfluvium, across the river. Vatemque virumque, the prophetess and the man. And then it gets a bit trickier, I think, at the bottom. Glaucaque is grey. Glauca is grey, like glaucoma. And in uva, so we have, I think, the reeds, the grey-green reeds. So a lot of vocab you do know, but probably worth checking over this section for any nasties that are particular to the set text. Let's have a look at the effects for the 8 and 10 marker. Okay, so we have that word pietatis coming up again, and we have a kind of double persuasion. If you are not moved by such a pious image, and pietatis seems to be for the benefit of the audience and not actually of Charon, who seems to be less concerned by sentimentality. At Ramum Hunc, so we have this caesura created at Hunc and Agnoscos when she pauses to do the dramatic reveal of the golden bough. We have focalization, so this is a technical term for when the epic narrator, or any narrator, tells a story from a character's point of view, and that gives us an insight into how they think or feel. We have this in ira tum corda residum, like the anger calmed in his heart, so we get Charon's reaction, and this is a bit of a surprise given what a malevolent seeming character he seems to be up until now. We have caesura again, at fatalis virgae, carolem adverti pupim, and in each clause we get a new verb that explains step by step what Charon does, and makes the slow turn of fortune really clear. We have enjambement that pushes the verb again to the beginning of the line, and we also have this with ingentem Aenean, so we have a new epithet like huge Aeneas, which is important because he is a living body, so it's underlining the fact that Aeneas, although he's alive, is being allowed to cross, and how important that is. Tandem trans, we have alliteration again, at last across, and we have a syndetic pairing in watemque, virumque, again they would be assonants, because we've got the que ending. It's coupling Aeneas and the prophetess together as kind of equals or peers in this crossing of the underworld. So this is where we finish with Charon, really. We're going to pick up in the next part of the underworld in the next video to have a look at Aeneas's progression through the underworld towards meeting Anchises, and that's what we'll be looking at in videos 3 and 4. I hope this video was helpful. I'm going to speed ahead and go and do the other ones because revision's closing in. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share to keep the channel going. Thanks!